Hello and welcome to another session of the Sqoop series. So in all our previous examples, we have imported the data. Now we have imported the entire table data. So whatever columns, whatever number of rows are present, we have imported all those data in entirety. Now this is not always the case, right? Sometimes we may want to import just a portion of the data. Maybe a table has like 10 columns, but we are only interested in two columns, three columns, so we just want to import only those two or three columns. Sometimes we want to import all the columns, but then we want to filter the data. Let's say we want to import only those data belonging to a particular state or belonging to a particular country, right? So in all these cases, what we are saying is, instead of importing the table as a whole, we will only import a portion of the table data. This is possible in Sqoop, and for this purpose we have two options. One is using a where clause. Here we basically specify the condition, basically a filter condition. Now based on this filter condition, it is going to filter the data and only that particular amount of data will be imported, very similar to the where clause in our SQL. The second is called as a free from query. Now instead of a simple where clause, we can write a query, something very similar to how we would write an SQL query. So we can do all the joins and everything in that query, and then we, whatever the result that is coming out of that query, only those data will get imported into the Sqoop, into the HDFS. So let's see this in action. So here is the MySQL database. So we are in retail underscore DB, and these are the tables that we have. So let's look at one of the table and see how the data is. So we have been using the customers table. So I'll check the customer table. I will limit the data to 10 records. Okay, so we have customer ID, customer first name, last name, email, password is all masked up, customer street, customer city, customer state, right? So let's say we, instead of querying all the data, we just want the data belonging to, let's say, particular customer state. So before that, let's just check customer state and customer city. So I'll only query this particular data, or maybe I can also add the first name and last name. So these are the tables data for these four columns. So what we are interested here is, let me also limit this data. So we are interested in the customer state. So what we will do is, you can see the customer state, there are different values like TX, CO, PR, C and others. But what we will do is, we will only import the data where the customer state is TX. So that's the data that we want to import, right? So we'll head over to the edge node where we are going to pull in the Sqoop commands. So I'm going to start with the Sqoop import, because this is an import, and I have the connect identifier. I am using the JDBC connectors for this. So that's JDBC MySQL. We are running on localhost. This is our port 3306, and then you know this is the database that we wanted to connect, and then you have to give your username and password. Let's take number of mappers as one. Let's take it 2, and the table is basically customers. We don't have to specify the split by here, but it's a good practice. Now why we don't need to specify the split by? Because we have customer ID as the primary key. Anyways, we will specify this. Now this one basically says that we want to import the date table, right, customers from this database, retail database. Now this is where you want to add your where clause. I don't want to import all the data, but I want to import only data where my customer state equal to TX. and put this where clause in quotes. I want to delete the target directory because I just want to put the new data here. And okay, here we go. So let me go ahead and execute this. This is okay. There seems to be an error. Okay, right. We mentioned delete target directory, but we haven't mentioned the target directory, right? So that option we have missed. So let me go back and correct this. This is okay. This is where you mention the target directory. Okay, now this is going to get executed and it is going to hit the table and it is going to apply the where clause, and it is only going to fetch the data. All right, we have another error. What is this? Okay, the safe mode, right? So if you see this name node is in safe mode, and it's a good thing that we have this error. And I think this is something that I have discussed in the architecture diagram as well, right? When we are discussing about the Hadoop commands as well. So basically what happens is when you shut down the system, uh, or when you just close the system in without proper shutdown, then the name node will go into a safe mode. Now whatever commands you put into the name node, it is not going to accept it because it's still in the safe mode. So you have to come out of the safe mode. And so we know that the command we have again discussed this Hadoop dfs admin. So this command will make sure that the safe mode is off, right? So current the safe mode is off. Now let me go back and re-execute this command. I hope there are no surprises now. It should not be, and I think this should get executed very quickly. We have the data. Let me go and check this data. We should have two files created because we gave the map as S2. So let me check this. All right, so you can see all of them are basically tx 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 tx, all the data. So only the tx data has been imported. So let me also check the other file. It should also be same, but let's just verify this. It should also contain, yes, all of the data belong to tx, right? So this is how we import a portion of the data using a where clause. Now what we did here is we imported all the columns, but again, let's say we just want to import few columns, right? So we want to add those few columns. So let me clear this first. So this is the command that we have used where we put the where clause, and we have imported only the section of the data that is satisfying this where condition. Now what I can do here is I can add hyphen hyphen columns. So this will specify the columns list that I want. So here I can specify the column names. So I'll put them in quotes. So let me just pick up the column names. What I want is customer first name, customer last name, state and city. All right, this is a small change. We just added the hyphen hyphen columns to make sure that we only select few columns whatever we have specified, right? So the command is now getting executed, and it should get complete at any time. All right, so the command is complete, it has executed. Let me go ahead and check this data. So we have used the delete target directory. So the previous command what we have executed, those data is all gone. So you should only see the new data. We have two files. Let me just do a cat on one of them. So you have only four columns. You have the first name, last name, you have state, you have city. You can see all of them are tx, right? Similarly, if you go back and check the other file, you should also see the same similar data with all 4 columns and just the customer state as tx. So this is how we import the data using a where clause. Now, so this is a command that we have used to query the portion of the data using a where clause. Now, another way of doing this is, instead of using a where clause, you can simply use a free form SQL query. Now, why we use this option is basically, if let's say you want to generate, or you want to pull the data belonging to multiple tables, you want to have this join conditions, you want to have so many other filter conditions, so using a where clause may not be that simple in that cases, or may not be sufficient, right? So in those cases we can use the hyphen query where clause. Now we're not going to pull any complex queries here, but the concept is that we wanted to understand how to use this hyphen query clause. Again, I'm going to write a simple query. You can try it with multiple join conditions and other things, and try to import this data. So what changes we need to do from the previous query? So we are not going to use this columns, and we're not using the where clause. Instead we are using the query, right? And then I want to write a simple SQL query. I will say select, I would use a customer ID because that's part of my split by, and all your queries should have a from clause. Your SQL queries should have a from clause, right? So we need this data from customers table, and we have to mention something called as and conditions, right? So this is very important to mention. Please don't forget to mention this. So this should be where. Now the reason why we use this and conditions is, so when you execute this query, it has to generate two mappers, right? So the data that each mapper needs to have, that is going to be generated using this. So when you specify these conditions, behind the scene, this conditions is going to have a unique condition expressions, maybe like this many records into this mappers, this many records into this mappers. Let's say we have used customer ID, so maybe all the customer ID greater than 5 will go into mapper 1, less than 5 will go into mapper 2, something like that, right? So this is the one. And because we have already mentioned the table name, this should not be there here, so we need to delete this as well. So this is a change that we have to do, and now it is going to get executed, and it is going to fetch the data, and it is going to put it into the HDFS location. We have used simple query. Again, feel free to use the query, complex query, whatever you want, and get it done. All right, so the data is now available. We use the delete clause, delete target. So whatever the data that you are seeing here is the latest data that has been generated from this query. So we have the same table, we are using the same data, we are querying the same data, but here what we have done extra is that we have added the customer ID column. So we have the customer ID column, and we haven't filtered anything here, right? We didn't apply any filter because we are just pulling all the data from the customers table with customer ID and few other columns. Okay, so let's say here, instead of just pulling all the data, we want to add a where clause and pull only those data which is belonging to, let's say, a particular state. Let's say I'm going to, it's very simple. Here we have the where clause. So what we have to do is we have to add this particular condition is, and now this here, this condition should be there as it is, and we have to add and here. Okay, that's a small change. Let me execute it, and now you should have this data along with the where column. So now you can see here, right, executing the SQL query where customer state is equal to tx. Let me go and check the target directory. So this is a command, and we should have two files. So let me go ahead and check the data. Alright, you can see here all the data belonging to the state tx is present. There won't be any other data which is not belonging to tx. Right, so this is how we can query the data. We can query a portion of the data. There are two ways. One is using a simple where clause. You just put a condition and query the data. You can add columns list using hyphen columns. Then there is a free from query where you can use a complex queries. So whatever suits best for you, use this, and you try different examples and input this data, right? So I hope this was clear, and I'll see you guys in my next class.